What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Big Nate. Welcome to Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews. And today we're reviewing A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So I got my doobie right here. It is ready to be sparked. And we are smoking this one for Hanya Yanagihara. So while I light this doobie right here, make sure to hit that like, make sure to hit that subscribe. I'm trying to beat the New York review of books. I'm trying to have Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews, beat New York, surpass the New York review of books, and we're well on our way. But yeah, hit that like, hit that subscribe. Let's run those numbers up. And then after that, once we very easily surpass the New York review of books, I'm going for the Pulitzer Prize in literary criticism. I'm on that Michiko Kakutani time. So yeah, hit that like and hit that subscribe. All right, let's get into the book. So this book was published in 2015. It was either shortlisted or a finalist for the National Book Award, the Man Booker Prize for Fiction, the Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction, and I think there was a bunch of others. And if you ask me, it should have been a finalist at least for the Pulitzer. That's if you're asking me, though. But yeah, so like, let's get into what the book is actually about. So this book, I would say it sort of follows four friends who kind of like meet up in New York in college. Like they meet for the first time. And they're young. They're like 17 or something like that. Maybe even younger. But like in their teens still. And this book follows them across their entire lives, basically. Like into young adulthood, into middle age, into old age. Like literally from like when they're 17 to like literally like to being like old heads, like for real. So it's very much like it's very much like a coming of age story for all of them, where you see them enter like new stages of their life, kind of deal with like identity crises and like find out they have new values and new interests, and like they get closer together and further apart, some of them throughout the years, and they deal with varying degrees of wealth and addiction and success and things like that. You basically just watch you watch like four friends grow up together and the highs and lows that come with it, but sort of more than that, or not more than that, but yeah, kind of. This is also the story of Jude, who is like he's like the central person in their friend group. Like without Jude, the friend group probably wouldn't probably wouldn't be what it was, and he is sort of introduced as like this enigmatic, kind of like mysterious person whose past is like not well known, but you can tell it's been like traumatic. Like Hanya Yanagihara does this really well, actually, where like, you know, he's kind of like he'll like flinch at like kind of certain things. You make like even like a jokey move and he can like flinch. He can get like real touchy, and he's also just sort of dodging questions about his past. Like they go for a really long time and like they still don't know the faintest clue about what his past is like. So he's a mysterious character from the beginning, and he's mysterious to the reader as well, because you don't even find out Jude's sort of like traumatic past, which he does have a very traumatic past. You don't even find out the full picture until pretty far in the book. So the whole time you're watching them grow, and you're also learning about Jude, and the sorts of what his childhood kind of looked like leading up to when we first met him. So that's kind of basically what this book is about. So if you've heard of this book, you've probably heard it paired with the term trauma porn or misery porn. Like literally, since the first I've been here seeing or hearing about this book, I never see it without those like phrases. So we're gonna get into that, but let's kind of ease into it. I'm gonna give my general thoughts about just what I think about the book and the writing itself, like what I like what Hanya Yanagihara does, like as an author. So first and foremost, the writing itself is just superb. Seriously, like it really is fantastic writing. Just in terms of like imagery and descriptions and just overall writing, but especially I love her imagery. Not so of course for just like descriptions of setting and place and scene and things like that. Like again, like you describing like a sunset or the city, something like that. if you're going to be a National Book Award, if you're going to be Man Booker finalist, if you're going to be all this, you got to have good imagery. But what really stands out for her, which I would put this, like, not that she's the first to do it, but this is one of the reasons I think it should have been nominated for a Pulitzer, honestly, is because her imagery extends to, like, ideas related to what it's like dealing with depression and trauma. Like, there's a great image. There's so many of them, first off, but there's a great image of, it's like a character. It's like Jude kind of picturing himself hanging on a tree branch, and below him is this bottomless pit of nothing. He can't see to the end of it, and he's trying to hold on to the branch, but he's slipping. He's slipping and falling. Like, he's trying so hard to hold on, but he just keeps slipping. And, like, wow, that's just a great image. And there's so many of those in this book. So it's really just great. It's really just great writing overall. Even the people that leave like shitty little 1-star trauma porn reviews on like Goodreads, even there, like, the writing is kind of fire though. So yeah, there's that. But what she also does really good, which I think is why she should be, like, this is me talking the Pulitzer talk still, is because she achieves such like a depth of character. It's kind of crazy. So this is like a long book. You see this? Like, this is like, my copy is like over 800 pages. She is deceptively thick. Now, what comes to mind with books like so big in scope like this are books like East of Eden and books like Pachinko. But what's different about this, I think it's even longer than those kinds of books, but books like that sort of are like intergenerational stories, or maybe not just generational stories. That was like me trying to sound smarter than I actually, that's what that was. But yeah, like, you know characters who have kind of children, and you get to watch them grow up, and you get comfortable with them, and then they have children. There's stories told over generations. A Little Life is the story of a lifetime, but she just digs really deep into all these characters. Like that's what I'm saying. There's a depth of character in this book that I haven't got anywhere else. And I think that's like special. I really haven't seen that done. I think and she does it so good too. That's what I'm saying. The writing here is fantastic. It's like a very character driven book. And you think that would almost be real. Like, think about that. Like, an 800 something like very character driven book. Like, things definitely happen in this book, but it's about the people. And I finished it like way faster than I thought I would. It's crazy. But okay, that's kind of the good. I mean, everything else is just really good too. Like, it's just a solid story. It's not really worth anything else, really, I guess, like, worth going. Anything that you can do good, she does good. But all right, now we got to talk about the misery porn, trauma porn allegations. This book is like roasted, and not just because I see it on YouTube. Apparently it's like a thing on TikTok. I see it on Goodreads. People have talked to me, like, reliable sources that I know have told me that they think it's like trauma porn, and even like actual like critics, like actual literary critics, accuse this book of being like that. And I just seriously could not disagree with more than that. Like, like, we'll get into it, but the question of like trauma porn, misery porn, it's like the idea is that it is excessive, it is unnecessary, it didn't need to happen. And that's like so wrong. That's like what this book is about. It's like about the trauma. This is like a book about trauma, and it had to be that bad and I'll tell you right now, it really does get bad. It gets like like basically as bad as you can imagine something being. It gets, but the point is, she does the writing fantastic, which is always a plus when we're like talking about these things. But the thing is, the trauma was central to who Jude was, because for how bad he was traumatized, he was stubborn in letting people in and letting people like love him and appreciate him, and also just his feelings of self-hate. Like, seriously, he, like, it should be so clear to anyone. It should be so painfully, obviously crystal clear that these motherfuckers love him. Like, they love him. They want nothing more than to see him happy. And he just can't believe it. It just does not compute. He thinks he is deceiving them. Yeah, I almost just said something, but he thinks he thinks he is deceiving them. He thinks he is selfish and greedy and pathetic because he doesn't leave them because he knows they'd be better off without him. Like that kind of stuff. He just can't accept even the smallest morsel of love and appreciation or kindness or anything. And she has a great part. I think when he was younger, he gobbled up like signs of affection, like small little things of affection, like a rat would moldy bread. Like, just the images in here are fucking killer, bro. But I'm just saying that Jude as a character is so impenetrably stubborn about receiving, like, opening up a little bit. And that's the whole point of this book, is like trying to crack that shell and get Jude out of like what he thinks the world is like that kind of stuff. And it almost wouldn't be believable, like, if it wasn't something really profoundly bad, and it ended up being like profoundly bad. So I will say, look, I will give you this. To achieve what she was trying to achieve with, like, how recalcitrant, I don't think that's the right word, but I just keep saying stubborn, but how stubborn he is, and his self-hatred and, like, inability to let other people in. And, like, she didn't need to be as extra as she was in the book, because it is pretty extra, I'm not gonna lie. But it's not, though. Or if it is, that's the point, because the whole thing is that these kind of stories happen in real life. Like, these things happen. Like, we all know stories. Like, we've all heard those things where it's like some terrible, like, disgusting, terrible things happen to like women and children, like boys and girls, and like real, like makes you sick to your stomach kind of stories. Those we know those. We've everybody has heard those. And we kind of push it to, like, the back of our mind, you know, like, we don't really think about it because it's so hard to think about. Like, what are you supposed to do? And it's just, and what this book forces you to do is, like, 812 pages of making you confront that and see what it's like, what it might have been like to have gone through, what's, like, some of the things that he's gone through, and some of these, like, insane things that he's gone through, and the effects that it can have on an individual. Like, I think that was, like, part of the point of this book, and is that these things really happen. And there was even, like, I saw an interview or something where her friend was, like, hiking or something, and came across, like, a 10, 11-year-old boy, and was like, the boy was like, yo, you want to come back to, like, my place? And they were like, okay. So they went, and there was, like, an older dude there, and she's like, okay, or they were like, I don't think it was actually Hanya, Yanagihara, but they're like, okay, it's like his father. But it quickly became clear they were, like, lovers, so they called the police and everything. But that's, like, a slight inspiration for this book, is these things fucking happen. This is the real world, and she's making you see, it's giving you, I mean, so there's the trauma porn stuff just in terms of the story, like, to even, like, Jude's character and his whole story, but then there's also an additional function to it, which is, like, talking some real shit here, like, giving you insight and perspective of what someone like this is dealing with. And especially too, like, it had to be, one of the complaints about this book is the self-harm can be, you know, she's just as graphic about self-harm as she is with anything else. And that's not really a spoiler, and honestly, that's something that you should know going into this book. That is something you should know anyway. It's a thing, but it almost had, not even almost, it had to be like that, because because unless you go there, you can't feel it like they do. And once you do feel how, like, they feel, then you have a new understanding of what it's like to be somebody dealing with that. So I definitely came out the other end of this book, like, having learned something. And if you're anybody who's been if you've been dealing with a fraction of what he's dealing with, then I salute you, because you are a soldier, like, for real, because this is some crazy shit, what I just read. But yeah, so, like, that's what's, like, really great. And it might even be, it kind of reminds me, it's reminiscent of the title, honestly, is you zoom in on one person, you hone in on the experience of one person, and just the pure effect that the trauma has on this person's life and what that amounts to and the people around him. And then she has multiple quotes in the book where she draws that to the next level. And like there's a part where where they're feeling like they're looking at Jude, and they feel a sadness, not like a pitying sadness, but like a larger sadness. But basically because it's like Jude is just one of the like millions, maybe even billions of people in the world that are having it as bad as him, if not worse. Like you could say Jude in some real world cases, as fucked up as it is lucky compared to people. And she just kind of scales it up. She shows you one example of it, and then scales it to the millions and billions of the world. And she has a great line where she says something like it was obscene in its suffering, something like that. Like, but obscene, she says the word obscene because it's like literally some absurdly, like, because I will say some of the shit in this book is kind of almost like absurd, but the like what happens, it's almost like not believable. It's almost like not comical, but it's like really like like that you're just coming like, it's like that kind of vibe. But that's what the world is like. And I think that's why I kind of do get why people get like the trauma porn thing, because this word obscene, just how atrocious and like heinous people can get. And then to put it in a book. But that's the point, is to show something. That's what good literature is too, is to reflect something true about the world. And that's what she does. And then what I hate, that's what pisses me off, is when people say that she shouldn't have wrote this book, or that they're like offended of this book. Is like, the way I'm seeing it is like, if you think somebody shouldn't write their story, or you think someone who's endured something like this shouldn't tell their story because it offends you or because you can't handle it, then that, to me, that's a special type of entitlement. Like that's what that is. That you would say, what about the kite runner? I forget his name who wrote it, but should he not have read it because it makes you feel uncomfortable? The Color Purple, Alice Walker. Should she not have read it? Should Jeanette Walker, or Jeanette, I forget her last name, but Glass Castle, should she not have talked about that? Just Mercy, A Child Called It. I could go on. Like, should they not have told their stories because it makes you feel some type of way because you can't handle the heat and you won't get out the kitchen and you got fucking burnt? That's not my problem. And that's like like you can't be doing that. Like and like, I'm not trying to knock people who don't want to read this book, because I'm saying, if it, like, I really mean this. Like, if you're not ready for this book, then don't do it, because you got to be in a good place to be reading this book. And I will say, as fucked up as the book is, it is touching and beautiful and amazing and inspiring, but you do got to be ready. But I just don't like when people finish this book, like they're really gonna read this book and like hear everything I just say and reduce it down to trauma porn, misery porn. Get out of here. That is not what this is. This is a phenomenal piece of literature in which multiple traumatic things happen. That's the difference. There's trauma for trauma's sake. The trauma plot adds nothing, didn't need to happen, and then just excessive in what it's doing. You can do that, and this does walk a fine line, but because it's so good, this is just a piece of literature in which traumatic things happen, and it's a difference. So okay, I feel like I've said my piece about that. I'm gonna give my rating, and then maybe do a couple points of critique, and then we'll wrap it up, because I feel like we're going a long time now. So I'm gonna give this book an A+, and it's definitely a 2022 Big Nate Book Review certified stamp of approval. It definitely gets that. But yeah, I mean, at the absolute lowest, an A. Like, I have no complaints about this book. I mean, there are some times where it is a little slow, but it's like a character-driven book, and that's like a small price you pay to get to know these people and like see their interact and be so invested in them. It's a very small price to pay. And I will say, in defense of like the trauma porn stuff, there are a couple points that were like not believable to me. Like they almost took me out of the story for a second, where it's like, really, is there even like that many people that's trying to even like do that? Like that, like just a couple points where I was like, okay, that is a little much. Like, but that comes down more to like bad writing, because you could have the same level of, not bad writing, but but you could have the same level of trauma and just have done it in a realistic way, more realistic way, and I would have been, and then it would have been fine. But yeah, there is that. So, but that overall, it's like, I think this is like a contemporary masterpiece, and I don't really say that lightly. And this is like not my type of book, like just like friendship, because this is a very wholesome book, I'm telling you. But like friendship and love and like dealing with trauma, and they're like in New York, and it's the 21st century. That is not that is not my thing. But this book transcended all that, and if you are into that kind of stuff, I feel like you will really like this. But again, you just gotta know what to be going into. But okay, I'm gonna wrap it up real quick though. Up next, I have Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, which I really fucked with. And then I'm like a third of the way through Sing Unburied Sing by Jasmine Ward, and I am super fucking with this book. So hit that like, hit that subscribe. You're gonna want to tune in. And thank you for watching Big Nate's Book Reviews, home of the best book reviews.